Okay, so we're here today to do a little bar review. Um, there's only so much we can do without doing really big lifts on these things over the course of several years. But we got a couple of these bars in our possession, and a lot of people have asked questions about these bars, so I figured I would go ahead and get this out there. The first thing to note is that we're not claiming to be an impartial third-party reviewer by any means. If anything, we have about 50 reasons to be biased here. I'm still just going to put our opinion out there on these bars, and I'm going to let you know what the biases are. First of all, we have existing business relationships with both Rogue and Eleiko. Eleiko has licensed us to use their trademark for a t-shirt, the Eleiko vintage shirts, which we've been selling for almost a year. We do business with Rogue. Rogue sells hook grip stuff. They've given us stuff before. For instance, both of these men's bars were given to us. We bought both of these Eleiko bars. We haven't been given anything by them, but these were given to us. So I just don't want you to think that we're claiming in any way to be impartial. So we're not. But that being said, here's our opinion on these bars and why we think it's important to get this out there. Basically, as you know, there's 5 IWF approved bar manufacturers, being Eleiko, Usaka, ZKC, DHS, and WorksOn. All 5 of them are good bars. You don't really have to worry too much about getting really low quality bars from any of them. They all make high quality bearing barbells that have been used in the Olympic Games. Actually, I'm not sure if WorksOn's been used in the Olympic Games, but the others have all been used in the Olympic Games. And WorksOn was used at the 2013 World, so they've all been used in big competitions. They've all been pretty good. So it basically comes down to a couple things. It comes down to personal preference, and it comes down to price, and it comes down to do you want to support an American company? Do you want to support a Chinese company? And obviously there's nothing wrong with wanting to support one or the other, or caring more about price, or caring more about this or that. But the interesting thing about the Rogue bar is it's the only bar here that's actually made in the U.S. And it's one of a few bars that are made in the U.S. with bearings. So anyway, that being said, the first thing to see here is the first 2 bars are both Rogue bars. They're a little bit different. The one all the way on your left uses European steel. The second one in uses American steel. And then these last 2 bars, this one with the darker end cap is an older Eleiko training bar. I'm not sure exactly how old it is, but I'm guessing 20 years, something like that. The other one is a pretty new Eleiko Sport bar, which is their basically one step below training bar. That is actually a pretty new bar. That was purchased, I don't know, maybe 9 months ago, something like that, 8-9 months ago. So if you just look at the bars real quick, you will see that Rogue has actually put center knurling onto these bars. I believe that not all their bearing bars come with center knurl, but it is an option. And you can see the markings are exactly the same as the Eleiko bars, even the one that's pretty significantly older than the other bars here. So Rogue has copied the IWF approved markings, which I believe is a good thing in my opinion, because you'll be practicing on a bar which will be the same as what you'll use in competitions. Alright, let's move on to the next step. Okay, moving on. We've loaded the bars with 70 kilos, and we put some plates in between just to prevent them from rolling, because we're going to be doing a little bit of bar spinning shortly. So this is the Rogue European steel bar all the way in the end. This is the Rogue American steel bar in the middle, and that's the Eleiko Sport bar down there. These are all 20 kilo men's bars. So a couple things to note. One, I realized I didn't mention this before. when Rogue gave us these bars, there was no deal made. It wasn't, hey, we'll give these to you, put up a positive review. We'll give these to you, put up a review at all. It was just, hey, we want to send you bars, and we want to know what your thoughts are on them. So I've sent them some thoughts and this and that, but I still get a lot of questions about these bars, because a lot of people see them come out and kind of wonder what the bar's like, and before spending $500 on something that's not proven, they want more information. So basically, I think we've had them for, I don't know, anywhere, we've had the EU one for a lot less time. I think maybe 3 months, I think maybe 6 months for this one, I'm just guessing. We've had some heavy lifts done on both of them. They haven't gotten heavy daily use, and so that's probably the thing that I would caution the most about the Rogue bars, which is that while I believe in Rogue as a company with regards to standing behind their bars, you just don't know that a bar that has basically been invented, or I mean, these weightlifting bearing bars, and by the way, that's the bar we're talking about. I think it's labeled the WLING bar. These bars have been around for less than a year, as far as I know, and so you just can't necessarily give it quite the same, basically manufacturing credentials as far as barbells go as an Eleiko bar. And I say that as someone who really likes Rogue stuff. Across the room I have about a 5-year-old Rogue squat stand, which is great. Been holding up perfectly since day one. I have that Rogue bench over there, which is not that old, but those bolt together benches are amazing, I think, for the price. So I believe in Rogue as a company, but there's still something to be said for just the proof of people having 20-year-old Eleiko bars, and you don't have 20-year-old Rogue bearing bars. So I do think it will hold up, but you don't know. Now, getting beyond the reliability aspect, by the way, these have both been perfectly reliable for us. There are no problems whatsoever. But getting beyond the reliability aspect, I mean, what you're really looking for are things like whip, knurling, and spin. So once I don't know. I don't know what I could really say about the whip. I mean, as far as I can tell, in our experience with people doing heavy lifts, the whip on the Rogue bar is really nice. Everyone who's used it, who's done heavy lifts, has said the whip is really nice. That being said, I mean, pretty much everyone thinks the whip on Eleiko bars is perfect, so it's hard to really be better than that. Now, as far as spin goes, which is a really important thing, one thing you'll see is a lot of manufacturers or people or whoever that are demonstrating their bars, they'll put their bar into a squat rack, they'll put like a 10-kilo plate on it, then they'll start spinning it. And of course it's going to spin, because it has the momentum of a 10-kilo plate pulling it around in a circle. This is a whole different story. Having a bar on the ground that'll actually spin multiple rotations after force has stopped being applied to it is just a different level of test and a different level of proof of the ability of the bar to spin. So we're going to do that in the next part. Okay, now we're ready to do some spinning of the bars. Obviously we don't, we're not some sort of professional bar reviewers by any means here. We don't have a way to apply the exact same amount of force. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my foot, put it on the bar, and I'm basically going to spin it as hard as I can. And remember, this is the Eleiko Sport Bar. So as you can see, it keeps spinning. It spins well. I don't think anyone in the world would complain about the level of spin of this bar. I think it spins great. So here's the Rogue American steel bar. And one thing I should note is that the American and European steel should not spin any differently. There's no difference in the bearings. So here's the spin on it. It spins. It doesn't spin anywhere near as well as the Eleiko bar. And this is actually one of the things that I voiced as a concern to Rogue, and they basically told me that they changed the construction of these bars from the way that this one's made to the way that this next one's made, because I think there's a noticeable, huge spin difference. So this is the Rogue EU bar. As you can see, this bar spins pretty damn well. You can hear the rotation in the sleeves, just like an Eleiko bar, and it's hard for me to get my foot in the frame. Here, let me see if I can do this. It keeps spinning after I take my foot off. So, according to Bill, who's the owner of Rogue, all bars should be built the way that this bar has been built, whether they're using the European or American steel. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't gotten any bars past this one. I know that when people have come to use these bars, people much prefer this one because they feel like it spins extremely well. It spins on the level of an Eleiko bar. At least it spins easily well enough to do Olympic lifts without any sort of issues. So that's the spin. Now in terms of the knurl, I don't know that there's any good way for me to get across the knurl in a video, but I can just tell you that the knurl on these bars is definitely lighter than an Eleiko bar. There's no way that it's rougher. It's actually a lot lighter. However, it's actually got a really nice grippy feel to it. I like the knurling a lot on the Rogue bar. One thing also to say about the Rogue bar is the knurling's extremely consistent bar to bar. I've felt a fair number of these Rogue bars, and there's just no deviation at all from bar to bar. Whereas with the Eleiko bars, 1 year their bars will be one way, the next year their bars will be a different way. It always feels good. Like, I've never felt Eleiko knurling that did not feel grippy, but the Eleiko knurl definitely changes from bar to bar. And I'm not just talking about competition to training to sport. I'm talking about, I have a friend who ordered 2 sport bars probably a month or 2 after I ordered mine. And the knurling on his sport bars is completely different than the knurling on my sport bars. And I have a women's sport bar in addition to the men's one that I'm demoing in this video. And so basically, I think you're going to be fine with the knurling on each. Obviously, Eleiko has a reputation for very sharp knurling. But I would say the Rogue is not going to chew up your hands unless you have extremely, non-conditioned hands. And of course the Rogue barbell, or any barbell with knurling designed for weightlifting, will chew up your hands if you try to do some sort of 100-rep CrossFit workout with it. The knurling's just not designed to be applied to your hands that many times in that short a period of time. You're going to tear up your hands. You don't want to really use a weightlifting bar for CrossFit. You want to use something that's a lot slicker, something where you don't need the ability to hold on to, 300-400 pounds. All right. Next part coming up. So some of this review, obviously it's not a comprehensive review. You can't do a comprehensive review without people lifting heavy weight on it over a sustained period of time, but this hopefully gives you some idea of the sort of spin and knurl that you're looking at, and the and just the general quality of these bars. They're very well made. I think bottom line is you can't go wrong with any of these bars. I mean, if you buy an Eleiko sport bar, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the Rogue bar is better. It's not a better bar. It's really hard to make a better bar than the Eleiko sport bars. However, the Rogue bar is pretty much on the same level. As long as you get one that spins, and Rogue has, as far as I can tell, they've really stood behind their bars. Like, they told me basically with this middle bar that, they would basically take a look at it and fix it. And I told them about another Rogue bar that basically spun similarly to this that was at a gym near here, and they told me to tell the gym owner to write to them and they would replace it and this and that. So I think they're going to stand behind their bars. But assuming that they do spin like this one, the EU bar down at the end, I think you're getting a bar that is on the level of an Eleiko bar for a better price. Now, that's the important thing to think about here. Price and country of manufacture. One, both of these Rogue bars are made in the U.S., so if you want to support USA companies, if you're from the U.S., obviously lots of you aren't, but if you're from the U.S. and you want to support American companies, Rogue bars are made in the U.S. The Eleiko bars, I believe, are made in Sweden. Nothing wrong with supporting Swedish companies too. But this Eleiko Sport bar, I believe, is in the 700s. It depends. There's a couple different sources to get them. Obviously, we're talking about new, not used. If you happen to get a great deal on a used bar, that would always be the best way to go. But I think these bars are in the 700s. I believe I paid maybe $7.25 per bar earlier this year. These Rogue bars are, frankly, they're not a huge drop. If you get the chrome bar with a center knurl and all this other stuff, Rogue prices their bars by the finish of the bar. I think these bars are in the 600s. So you're maybe looking at $100. So obviously that's nice. I mean, it's, I don't know, 20% discount, which especially if you're a gym owner looking at getting 5, 6, I don't know, 10 bars, whatever, that's a big difference. But another thing to note is that they do offer one that doesn't have the chrome finish. It looks a little bit different. I don't think it behaves any differently. And I believe the entry-level Rogue weightlifting bar is $5.25. So that is a pretty big difference. I think it's, as far as I can tell, it's the best bar that I know of that you can get for $500. However, another thing to note is that there are several other bar manufacturers that are entering the market in the U.S. and actually elsewhere in the world in the near term. Examples would be, again, Faster is just launched the Klokov line of bars, which is promising a pretty revolutionary price point I think in the low 300s. And they say it's a made in China bearing bar that's supposed to be really good. Klokov himself told me that he thought it was a great bar. Obviously, he's biased, so people have to test it out. I just couldn't get one in time for this review. Otherwise, I would have tried to, buy one or whatever. And also other manufacturers include, obviously, like I said, the Worksons and the DHSs of the world. They both have USA basically distributors where you can buy their bars. The DHS bars I think are pretty good, but I think the knurling is a little bit too light for my particular taste, but I do think they're pretty good bars, and their training bars are in the 500-ish range as well, which would compete pretty directly with this Rogue bar. And then the last thing to note is ZKC USA, which is a new entrant in the market. ZKCs have been around for a while. They were the bar at the Beijing Olympic Games for the men, and the DHS bars were used for the women at the Beijing Olympic Games. ZKC will also be the official bar and plate at the Rio Olympic Games, so you're going to see a lot more of them in the next year or so. But ZKC USA just started in the US, and they don't really have much in the way of inventory yet, but they do promise, another kind of high quality bar imported. I'm not sure of the exact prices and when things will be available, but I would expect in 2015 to see a lot from ZKC USA. So basically there's a lot of new bars coming into the market that I think are worth mentioning. And what we're really talking about here is, what can you get in the $500, $600, $700 range that's a really good weightlifting bar that's going to last you for your lifetime and is going to spin well and is going to have great whip and this and that. Obviously, if you're looking for beater bars for your CrossFit box, you don't want any of these bars. And obviously, if you're running a weightlifting competition and someone gave you a $1,000 budget, well, you pretty much have to go with an IWF spec bar. The Rogue ones are not IWF spec, and it's kind of hard to argue if you're going to spend $1,000 on getting anything other than an Eleiko bar, just because, they've been proven over the years. So, what I'm really talking about are bars in the $500, $600 range. Oh, you know what? Another one I forgot to mention are Penlay bars. I've never really used one. I've had some issues with other MDUSA equipment not being really up to what it's supposed to be. However, I've had other MDUSA equipment which has been great. So I don't know exactly what to trust with regards to MDUSA with the reliability. I know the guys at MDUSA train on it all the time, and they don't seem to have problems, so I'm assuming the bar's pretty good, but I can't really speak one way or another on it. And I guess that's pretty much it. I would just say, you know, the Rogue bar is definitely a worthy competitor, and if you want to save yourself a bit, it could definitely be a better option than spending in the 700s. But I guess that's pretty much it. Just wanted to add my thoughts. Thanks. All right, so I'm standing here with Ian Wilson with 3 bars that are somewhat in competition with each other. This first one is the Eleiko Sport bar. It's a bearing bar, and it's the one that's kind of below the training bar in price, but it's not the cheapest bar they make. They actually make one called the XF bar, kind of CrossFit, I guess. And then there's this bar, which is the relatively new Rogue weightlifting bar. This is the one that you can buy on the site right now. I believe it's made with American steel. I'm not actually entirely sure, but I think that's the case. It is made by Rogue in Ohio, though. And then this last bar is a bar that you can't get quite yet, but should be out pretty soon. And this is the Rogue weightlifting bar made with European steel. So basically, Ian has been lifting for most of his lifting career on something similar to the Eleiko bar. I believe, I don't know, Ian, you could tell us, is this the first time you've ever lifted on a Rogue bar?
Yeah, I've never had a Rogue weightlifting bar before, so this is the first time.
Okay, so the last 2 days or so, you've been here lifting at the Hook Grip Center, and you've used the EU bar.
Yeah, so this is the one I've trained on most of the time. Got to try out their new bar, and you can see the spin on it is, if you watch here, spin here.
Check the Rogue American.
So this is the Rogue EU steel, and then the Rogue American. This one definitely still spins. It's not tight or anything. It's consistent. It's just not quite as loose as this one. You can see the difference there.
Give the American one another spin. Huh. So it just sounds different.
Yeah,
I'm
it sounds different.
Not sure why. How do you compare the two knurlings on the EU and the American? I mean,
knurling to me feels the same.
So the knurling feels consistent. And then with the Eleiko,
then you can see the spin on it.
So the Eleiko and the Rogue EU, or how would you say they compare spin wise?
I think the Rogue EU might spin even better than this Eleiko.
But they both spin pretty well, you think?
Yeah, it's a very loose spin. This one here, it's consistent, so it's not something to worry about when you're lifting. But in terms of just the loosest turn.
I gotcha. So what else do you look for in a bar other than knurl and spin? I mean, what are the aspects that you think make these bars good or bad?
Well, durability is going to be the main one, but we don't really know how these new bars here. But so far, training on, especially the Rogue EU one, it feels just as good as a DHS or Eleiko bar.
Yeah.
And it's a lot cheaper, so.
So overall, if you were to spend, let's say, $500 on a bar, I guess right now your options would be Rogue bearing or DHS. I mean, you can't get an Eleiko bar.
DHS bar, I don't think, for.
The training bars are about $500.
I think it's more expensive.
They're about $5. Yeah, no, I've looked them up.
I've never used a DHS training though. I've only used competition.
Oh, competition or more, yeah.
Okay.
So overall, you're a fan of the Rogue. Obviously,
The Rogue EU.
The Rogue
I think
EU.
I like the spin best. Just kind of a psychological factor.
Yeah.
When you walk up to the bar, you want to feel a nice loose spin.
Right.
Versus, this is still spins fine. I don't think it would actually affect your performance at all.
Okay.
There are Usaka bars, for example, that hardly turn at all, and people still lift on them. But just in terms of the nicest bar, I think the Rogue EU has the best spin and the best feel.
So overall, you think the Rogue EU is a really good bar? I mean, obviously, I know you like Eleiko bars, because who doesn't like Eleiko bars?
Yeah, that's what I grew up on. But what I will say is the spin feels a lot more consistent on the Rogue one. I got a Eleiko training bar at the 2012 Arnold, and
does it spin more like that middle Rogue one?
Yeah, it's a little bit more like the middle one, but it's also not as consistent. It'll spin on the 2012 Eleiko training bar that I got. The spin's not as consistent, so at first I had to oil it, and it's somewhere between probably these two bars most of the time, but a lot of the time you think it might lock because it'll be perfectly smooth on the spin, and then it'll just be a little bit sticky.
So do you think that Eleiko bars are just inconsistent? Because I've seen some that have that great loose spin. Like I've got a couple Eleiko training bars that have the great loose spin. They spin really nice. The knurling's great. The whip's great. Do you think?
Yeah, at home we have a, I think, 15-year-old Eleiko competition bar, and it spins perfectly. It's about 15 years old. I don't know if we've ever oiled it.
Yeah.
Maybe once, but pretty much. It's just the way it came out of the package.
So I guess what we have yet to see then is whether Rogue bars will be more like this EU one consistently, or whether they'll be more like the first one consistently, and maybe it's just something with all companies where a couple bars spin a little bit looser than others, and it just depends.
Yeah, we won't really know until time.
I guess what's your final verdict? Do you just think the Rogue seems like it's a decent contender for a good bar, or what would you say?
Well, to me, this Rogue EU bar especially feels like an Eleiko bar, so or thereabouts. You know, it feels like a first-class bar.
So is the only difference between?
Cheaper.
Sorry.
If it's a couple hundred dollars cheaper, so.
Right. So would you say the only difference between these two Rogue bars is the looser spin on the EU, as far as you can tell?
That's the only difference that I feel. The knurling feels the same to me.
What would you say?
It's not too sharp as a training bar. When the bar is too sharp, you know, you might want it sharper in a competition, but in training, they'll eat your hands pretty quickly.
So you think it's less sharp than typical Eleiko knurling?
I don't know if it's less sharp than a typical Eleiko knurling. Maybe a little. Yeah, probably a little bit.
A little bit, but still enough to hold on to.
Yeah, no problem holding on at all.
All right, cool.
Cool.
Thanks, Ian.